start today's lesson. So what are the learning outcomes of today's lesson? So at the end of today's lesson, we will be knowing actually passive transport. I have told you, discussed in the previous slides, osmosis, diffusion and imbibition. So if you have not gone through those topics, please refer to those videos as already taught in the previous, and I think in the second part of plant physiology I have already discussed about osmosis and diffusion. So these three topics have been covered in the previous videos. So please do go through them. Now in today's topic we will be discussing mainly on the active transport. So this topic need not be done in too much details, as it is to be covered in brief in your 10th plant physiology part. So I have tried my best to cover it in just a few slides. So today we will be discussing about active transport and major three types of active transport, like sodium potassium pump, endocytosis and exocytosis. Now we will also discuss about the difference between diffusion and this active transport. So let us start with today's new part. Now let us see today's first topic, that is passive transport. So what is it? Now passive transport is always, it takes place along the concentration gradient and requires no energy from the cell. So it is always along the concentration gradient. What does it mean? That is, it moves always from higher to lower concentration and it requires no energy from the cell. Now this passive transport, we have already studied these three: osmosis, diffusion and imbibition. These three we have already studied in the previous videos. Now till now, those who have not gone through these videos, I would request you to go through these videos so that you can follow my next coming lessons. So I am putting the link up here. So please go through all the previous videos in plant physiology, especially to learn or to make the coming topics much easier so that you can learn them properly. So let us come now to the next part, that is active transport. Now see here we are having a diagram. So what does this diagram show? That a person, when I go on bike, he's showing that he is going on a bike. How does he feel? When he's cycling uphill, he is hating the bicycle, or the bike rather. But when he is moving downhill, he is loving the ride. So why is it so? So let us see the reason behind it. So science should always have a reason, right? So why he is loving the movement uphill? So what is happening? It is he is hating the bike uphill because it needs a lot of energy while riding uphill. So energy is required. But when he is going downhill, no energy is required in pedaling. So this is a very easier process, and this fellow is enjoying this moving downhill. The same thing happens when you are moving upstream of a river and rowing downstream of a river. So when you are moving downstream, that is, it is with the flow. When you are going, the rowing of a boat will be very easy. But when you are rowing upstream, that is opposite the flow, it will be very difficult for you to row a boat. So then you need to apply more energy. So the same thing happens here in case of the cycle. So he is applying energy while going uphill. So it is very difficult task for him to go uphill, and it is very easy task for him to go downhill. So this is actually the base of active transport and its process. So how it is happening? It is happening opposite to against the concentration gradient. That is from lower to higher concentration. So let us see what is happening actually. Now in this slide we will be discussing about active transport. So what is active transport? Now active transport is when the molecules move across a cell membrane from a lower concentration to a higher concentration. That is, they are moving against the concentration gradient. And this takes place with the help of an energy, that is ATP or adenosine triphosphate. So active transport is done so that cells get what they need, such as ions, glucose as well as amino acids. Now here we can see that there is a picture where it is showing a cell membrane with a protein carrier in the cell membrane, which will help in the transportation of ions from a region of lower concentration to higher concentration. So it is actually difficult for the ions like nitrates, sulfates and manganese etc. to pass through the cell membrane. Why? Because the concentration is higher inside the cell and it is outside the surrounding root cell it is higher. So but because the concentration is higher, inside the root cells it is higher and outside the cell it is lower. So it should move from lower to higher. So this is happening here also. It is moving from lower to higher. So here you can see that these are binding with this protein and they are being transported to the outside with the help of this ATP. So ATP is the energy required in the transfer of this ions from inside to outside. So let us see what are the other types of active transport we are going to discuss today. Now the first main part of active transport is the sodium-potassium pump, which is actually helping the sodium and potassium ions to move from inside to outside, or vice versa we can say. So what is happening here? Outside the cell we can see that there is a high concentration of sodium, whereas there is a low concentration of potassium ions. And inside the cell there is high concentration of potassium ions and low concentration of sodium ions. Now as it is active transport, here potassium from outside will move inside from low to high concentration, and sodium, which is in low concentration inside, will move from inside to outside. So how it is happening? So 3 sodium ions and 1 ATP will bind to a protein. So this is a protein, it is a protein carrier we can say, which is in the cell membrane, to which the ATP is binding, and this 3 sodium ions are binding because the shape of the protein changes. This energy helps to change the shape, and this is pumping out this sodium to outside. You can see step by step. First step, the ATP is binding. Second step is hydrolysis of ATP, which phosphorylates the protein pump and changes its shape. You can see the shape change in this protein. So when there is a shape change, it allows the sodium ion to fit in the channel, and gradually it helps it to put it out of the cell or discharge the sodium ions out of the cell. Now in this type of protein, again the potassium binds to this kind of pump. Again that ATP or an energy is required. It changes again the shape of this protein ion and gradually it pumps it. So P1 is released and the pump returns to its original form, and K plus is discharged to the interior, exposing the sodium binding sites. Then the cycle is repeating again, because as this P1 is released, the ATP which was bound, that phosphorylates into ADP, and at the end of that discharging of the sodium outside and pumping in the potassium inside, when this protein pump is again in its normal condition, then again this pumping system can continue. So this is all is happening in the cell membranes. So this is very important part of active transport. So if you are still not clear and you do have any doubt, so please do ask me in my comment box, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can get my updates very regularly whenever I'm posting them, and don't forget to like and share. So this is all about the protein pump to which the energy is added, and it is pumping out the sodium ions outside and potassium ions are pumped inside as there is a change in this protein pump. So this is what is happening in sodium potassium pump. So let us see what is there in the next slide. Now we have come to another part of active transport, that is exocytosis and endocytosis. Now as this term exo and endo suggests, we know this exo means putting something out of the cell and endo means engulfing something inside. So do you remember or recall this type of term you have studied earlier? Yes, dear students, those who have already studied my osmosis lesson, you have studied endosmosis and exosmosis. So do you remember that? If you have not gone through those videos, please do go through it so that you can get clear idea of this exocytosis and endocytosis. Same thing is happening, only the term is bit different and the process is bit different. It requires energy. There in exosmosis and endosmosis, no energy was required, as it was an example of passive transport, which I have already told in the previous slides, that passive transport doesn't require any energy from the cell to be putting a substance inside or outside the cell membrane. So let us start this exocytosis and endocytosis. What is it? What is the definition? Now, it is the process in which the unrequired large particles are wrapped in a vesicle, and these vesicles go close to the cell membrane. They fuse to it. They fuse to the cell membrane. Then this fused vesicle opens up and the waste is transported outside the cell. So this is what is happening in exocytosis. So endocytosis is the process of actively transporting molecules into the cell by engulfing it with its membrane. So endo means you are engulfing the substance within the membrane, and exo means you are making a large vesicle of unrequired large particles. You are fusing with the cell membrane and the vesicle is opening the waste outside the cell. That is exocytosis. This is exocytosis. And endocytosis, engulfing it within its membrane. Now endocytosis and exocytosis are used by all cell transport the molecules that cannot pass through the membranes passively. So these two processes, endocytosis and exocytosis, they are helping those molecules of the cells that cannot pass through the membrane passively. So it is active transport. The substances which are unable to pass passively are transported actively, and this is another important transportation method in plant physiology. Now what is happening? The movement of macromolecules such as proteins, polysaccharides, that is, they are out of the cell, is called the bulk transport. The movement of macromolecules such as proteins or polysaccharides into or out of the cell. So into the cell is endocytosis, outside the cell is exocytosis, and it is always a bulk transport and which requires energy expenditure. Now what is the bulk transport? It means that huge amount of substances are transported by this method. Now is it clear to everyone, dear students? If it is not clear to you, please do ask me. Please do ask me questions in my comment box. Which part is not clear to you? So if it is not clear, ask me. I'll give you answers on those topics also. So this is all about exocytosis and endocytosis. So now we will wind up with the differences between active transport and diffusion, which is quite important for your ICSE exams. Now here first we will see a pictorial representation before going to the differences of diffusion and active transport. We will see here one exocytosis and endocytosis diagram. So what is it? So endocytosis means that there are certain particles here. The cell membrane is engulfing them and it is forming a separate vesicle which is being transported inside the cell. Exo means the unwanted particles inside the cell, they form a vesicle, they touch to the cell membrane, they open up and it is pushed out of the cell. That is, these are unwanted things, and might be these are some important things which are being engulfed by the cell. So this is a bulk transport. You can see many ions and molecules are transported together. It is not that only one molecule or ion is transported. A bulk transport is done here. So now we will come to the end of this topic, that is, we should go through the difference of diffusion and active transport. Let us see what is there. Now let us see this important topic where I have taught in each and every topic the diffusion and the difference between diffusion and imbibition. You have studied the difference between diffusion and osmosis. Now this is the part where you are going to study the difference between diffusion and active transport. So these are the major differences. What is happening in diffusion? The movement of ions and molecules from a region of higher concentration to lower concentration. What is happening in active transport? The substances are moving from a lower concentration to a higher concentration. Now using the energy from the cell, which is actually ATP or ADP, through a living membrane. Now in case of diffusion, we can say that there is a solute or a solvent molecule, but in case of active transport, there are only ions which are moving along the cell, no water. Now transport of molecules is along the concentration gradient. We have told you that it is moving from higher to lower, and it is against the concentration gradient in active transport. In diffusion, no energy, that is ATP or ADP, is required, but in active transport, the cell energy in the form of ATP is always needed. Now diffusion always happens through a twig or a non-living permeable membrane, but active transport occurs through a living selectively permeable membrane. So everything, whatever protein pump mechanism is there, exocytosis, endocytosis, we have all seen that there should be a cell membrane through which this transportation material happens. So this is what are the major differences between diffusion and active transport. So you should all go through the differences because it is very important for your ICSE exams, and you should go through all the topics which I am teaching so that you can follow the upcoming topics. Next topic I will be teaching you turgidity and flaccidity. So these are all small parts which you should learn a little bit in detail so that you can answer any type of question in your ICSE board exams. So please go through your textbook, whichever textbook you are following. Please make the basic concept clear so that it will be easier for you to answer all types of questions. So please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like and share. Thank you.